What will be a successful season for the LA Kings this year? We discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. If you would leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts, if you're a fan of the show, we'd appreciate that. We're also on YouTube, but please like and subscribe if you are enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for almost 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years. And of course, a passionate LA Kings fan for the past 30 years. This episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter the promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat with any order. You won't want to take your Birddogs off, we promise. We continue to count down to the upcoming season. We are 11 days away from the 2023 Rookie Face-Off, September 15th in Las Vegas, 18 days away from the NHL Global Series, the preseason opener at September 22nd with the LA Kings in Melbourne, Australia to take on the Arizona Coyotes, and 37 days away from opening night of the 2023-24 NHL season, October 11th, Crypto.com Arena, LA Kings against the Colorado Avalanche. Hope you had a great weekend and a great Labor Day holiday. We are officially back to being your team every day after a couple of weeks of kind of a slower period in the NHL. We were 3 days a week for about 4 or 5 weeks, but we are now back officially starting today to being a Monday through Friday podcast and YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone who stuck with us during the offseason, and perhaps welcome back to anybody that's getting back into the Kings now that we are getting close to the upcoming season. Coming up on this show, we're going to talk about the Kings' current group of prospects and where they rank in the NHL and what does it mean. We'll also talk about an interesting development with an NHL team as far as its local TV broadcasts. I wonder if the Kings could move in that direction as well. We'll also give you a preview of the upcoming week, a couple of special interviews coming up over the next few days. But first, we are getting closer and closer to what feels like a big season for the Los Angeles Kings. And with that in mind, I asked myself, what is a successful season for the LA Kings this year? Obviously, it's very subjective. Your answer might be different than my answer, but what is success? Well, according to dictionary.com, success is the favorable or prosperous termination of attempts or endeavors, the accomplishment of one's goals. So again, subjective. Some may say that only a championship is a successful season, and I get that, but I also think you have to be realistic. The Kings haven't won a playoff series since they won the Stanley Cup back in 2014. Now, is it possible they could go without winning a playoff series from their last Cup win and then suddenly win it all again? Possible, but seems unlikely. So let's quickly go back 2 seasons ago. The Kings were coming off a 6th place finish in the division. They had missed the playoffs for a 3rd straight year. Getting into the playoffs and then going 7 games against the Oilers kind of felt like, well, if not success, for sure a positive step in the right direction. Last year in the playoffs again a 3rd place finish in the division, but again, a 1st round loss to Edmonton. Disappointing for sure, but I still think it was at least a slight step in the right direction. Now, the Kings did post the 2nd most wins, 47, and the 2nd most points, 104, in a season in franchise history. Plus, this time around against the Oilers, even though it was 6 games instead of 7, it was a more competitive series. But same result. But again, I say slight progress. Now, I'm sure we can all agree, barring a rash of awful injuries and really bad luck, the Kings need to be and should be a playoff team for a 3rd straight season. To miss the playoffs would be a huge step back and would almost certainly cost head coach Todd McClellan his job. By the way, the Kings making the playoffs 3 years in a row isn't something we should take for granted. I became a Kings fan back in the 92-93 season when they made their improbable run to the Stanley Cup final and lost in heartbreaking fashion to those dreaded Montreal Canadiens. But since then, 30 years, you know how many times the Kings have made the playoffs 3 seasons in a row? Twice. Now, there was a stretch of 5 straight years from 2009-10 to 2013-14 that they did make the playoffs 5 years in a row. But the 3-year stretch for the Kings is not something that happens a lot. And it is worth noting that in the 2012 postseason, that was the 3rd straight year the Kings made the playoffs, and they went on to win their first Stanley Cup. So hopefully that's a good omen for this year's team. But back to the original question. What is a successful season for the LA Kings this year? I think we can all agree we need to see progress. Another step. That means not just making the playoffs, but advancing, winning a playoff series. Now, that's the bar. Anything less than that is a step back. Anything less than that, you couldn't call successful in any way. Now, the good news is, I think the Kings are well aware of this. Players, coaches, management, the expectations of the organization, I think, are to not just make the playoffs, but to get in and advance even deeper than beyond the first round, hopefully. Whether you agree or disagree with the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, that trade was made to help the Kings take another step. That was a move made to get the Kings beyond the first round. The Kings have been building and adding pieces. They brought in Victor Arvidsson and Philip Deneau, then made the playoffs. They bring in Kevin Fiala back in the playoffs. Now you bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's now about advancing in the playoffs. That is why I believe head coach Todd McClellan is not going to get an extension on his contract before the season starts, because without that next step, the Kings have upgraded with their roster. It'll be time to upgrade on their bench and get a new coach who can get the job done. If Todd McClellan can't this year, hopefully he can. Now, the way things look going into this season, I would not be surprised to see the Kings face the Oilers again, or maybe even the defending Stanley Cup champs in the first round. It is not going to be easy, but success this season means at least out of the first round of the playoffs. That is what, to me, and I think most Kings fans would agree, is going to be a successful season. It has to be more. It has to be another step. It has to be winning a playoff series. It has to be having success in the postseason. Now, while we are focused on the present, we'll also look at the future of the LA Kings as far as their prospects in the organization and why it ties into the present. That's next here on Locked on LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, this episode of Locked on LA Kings is brought to you by AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. AG1 contains less than 1 gram of sugar, costs you less than $3 a day, and it's 1 scoop in a cup of water. And that's it. No need for a million different pills or supplements to look out for your health. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. Now, I'm sure you know, if you've been with us throughout the offseason, that any news right now with the LA Kings is a little bit hard to come by. Now, that's going to change soon because we're going to have rookies reporting to rookie camp. We've got that rookie tournament going on, then training camp, the preseason, and on and on. But I did see an article, and I did repost it on Twitter or X or whatever the hell they're calling it these days. But I realized that not everybody is on Twitter, and frankly, maybe better off for not being on there, to be honest. But it is a good place to see news, and hopefully you follow the Locked on LA Kings Twitter account to get some news and notes on the LA Kings all season long. But there was a brief article written by a guy named Cam Robinson. He is of EliteProspects.com. And here was the headline: LA Kings prospect pool ranked number 22. Of course, that's 22 out of 32. So obviously it's down on the lower end of things in the NHL. And again, this article is not very long. So for those of you that didn't check it out, I'm going to read it to you because, again, it just will take about a minute. So here is the article from Cam Robinson talking about the LA Kings prospect pool being ranked 22nd in the NHL. It says, quote, between 2019 and 2021, the Los Angeles Kings dominated the EP Rinkside prospect pool rankings, a testament to their unwavering commitment to strategic development. The organization placed a premium on acquiring and retaining draft picks while also strategically pursuing prospects from other teams. Additionally, the team enjoyed the fortune of securing several lottery selections during this period. However, in the past year, the Kings experienced a setback as 5 of their top 10 prospects either graduated to the main roster or were traded. As of this year, they have slipped further, now occupying the 22nd position. This signals a departure from the previous emphasis on building through the draft and accumulating youthful assets. Instead, the Kings have transformed into a team that has clinched a playoff berth in consecutive seasons and is aggressively striving for a deep postseason run. Consequently, more players are likely to depart, particularly those with promising and foreseeable trajectories. Currently, the Kings possess merely 2 players within our top 100 rankings in this assessment. Despite this, they maintain a reasonably promising depth, boasting 14 players within their system projected to attain or approach NHL-level capabilities in the near future. Nevertheless, the impending graduation of Brandt Clarke this autumn will further narrow their prospects. And here's the final sentence of the article. Quote, it's winning time in LA, end quote. Sounds like that HBO, isn't there an HBO Lakers show? It's called Winning Time, something like that. Anyway, so that was the article again from Cam Robinson of EliteProspects.com. And I don't have a problem with most of it, but there is one issue I have with one word that he used, and that was the word setback when talking about players basically graduating from prospects to NHL players. That's not a setback. Yes, Brandt Clarke making the NHL roster subtracts him from the prospect pool and makes that pool weaker, but that's what you want. That's not a setback. That's success, to use a word that we've been talking about. While some might be distressed upon seeing the title of that article and knowing that the Kings prospect pool isn't what it once was, the reason the Kings had a high-ranked prospect pool was because they stunk for about 6 years, and they were able to acquire draft picks and assets. That's how this typically works. The worse you are, the more chances you get at drafting better players. Now, look at the worst-ranked prospect pools according to Elite Prospects. The defending champion, Vegas Golden Knights, are at number 29. The Tampa Bay Lightning are dead last at number 32. They've won 3 cups in the last 5 years. Of the bottom 13 teams, all but 2 of them were playoff teams a year ago. So acquiring prospects to develop them or trade them for established players is a huge part of rebuilding. Now, the headline of that article might seem like a bad thing, but in the case of the Kings or any of the other teams I named, it isn't. Now, Elite Prospects is unveiling a new team each week, and I promise you their top 5 will all be bad teams. I'm guessing the Arizona Coyotes have a good shot at being number 1. Good for them. They have one of the worst franchises in the NHL. So I'm just fine with the Kings prospect pool being at number 22. It means that we have a good NHL team. We are going to talk about what the future of the LA Kings on TV might look like. That's coming up next on Locked on LA Kings, your team every day. And this episode of Locked on LA Kings is brought to you by Birddogs. What are Birddogs, you ask? Well, Birddogs are shorts with underwear built in them. And I know you may ask yourself, why would anyone want to wear that? Well, the answer is actually really simple, because they are super comfortable and look great. Honestly, how often does something that looks good, feels good as well? Usually, if something looks good, it's not that comfortable, and vice versa. But this is the perfect combination. Not only do the Birddogs look good, they feel good. You can wear them in pretty much any situation. They look nice enough to wear out to a nice casual dinner, but feel good enough and are comfortable enough that you could work out in them if you wanted to. And once you try them, you're going to wonder why you never heard of these before. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, and when you enter the promo code LockedOnNHL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dog Yeti style tumbler. Oh, actually, they won't. They're going to throw in this tech hat. This is the tech hat they're going to throw in. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can see this hat. You can get one of these hats if you go again to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. Again, BIRDDOGS.com and enter the promo code LockedOnNHL to get your free gift. Hey, could you do me a favor and check out Locked On NHL, the daily show that covers the National Hockey League? They are doing their team previews, and I am told this guy, pointing to me if you are listening to this on the podcast, I am one of the guests on Locked On NHL today, Monday, talking about our LA Kings. So go check that out. That's Locked On NHL, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Now, as we get closer and closer to the season, we are still waiting to find out where we are going to be watching the LA Kings on TV locally. As I'm sure you know, the Kings will not be on Bally Sports Network anymore, with that group filing for bankruptcy and doing a death spiral. The Kings are not alone in having to go through this transition. And I was told by Kings fan Paul that there was some news regarding another team in the NHL that is going through this and what their solution has been. That would be the Pittsburgh Penguins. They have decided to start their own regional sports network. The owners of the Penguins are the Fenway Sports Group. They're taking over AT&T Sportsnet and creating Sportsnet Pittsburgh. And I got to be honest, I can't think of another NHL team that has purchased its own TV network. Now, the Fenway Sports Group, you might know, owns the Boston Red Sox in Major League Baseball. They obviously own Fenway Park. They own the New England Sports Network. That's and Nesson, they also are known by. They have the Boston Bruins games on that network, but they're mostly their big brand is the Boston Red Sox. And the Fenway Sports Group, they also own like an English Premier League team. They've got a lot of hands in a lot of different sports. But they're starting their own NHL-based sports network. Now, you look at some of the other big-time NHL franchises. The New York Rangers are on the MSG Network. That's the Madison Square Garden Network, and they're owned by James Dolan. He also owns Madison Square Garden, the arena, and the New York Knicks of the NBA, who also play in that arena as well, and they're on the network as well. So we know in Los Angeles, if you're a Dodgers or Lakers fan, they both have their own sports network. So is this an option for the LA Kings? Now, the Kings, you may or may not know, is owned by AEG. That is the Anschutz Entertainment Group. They own the Kings. They own Crypto.com Arena. They own a lot of arenas around the country. Their owner, Philip Anschutz, basically started Major League Soccer. And I think he owns several of the teams in MLS, including the LA Galaxy. So there's a lot of money there for the Kings ownership group. Now, could they buy Bally's Sports West and create an LA Kings network like the Penguins did? AEG is worth about $9 billion. The Fenway Sports Group, about $8 billion. That was according to a quick Google search that I did. So the Kings definitely have the money as far as their ownership group. But I don't see this happening. AEG isn't cheap. They spend to the cap. They give the Kings a lot of resources to build a good team. And I think they certainly pay their employees well, so on and so forth. So I wouldn't call them cheap at all. But I also don't know that the LA Kings are their priority, right? That it's a win at all costs kind of thing, that they'll throw all the money necessary, right, into the Kings to try and make them a winner. I think they do spend well, but I also think they're reasonable with their spending, I guess you could say. So I don't know that they're willing to invest in their own sports network for the Los Angeles Kings. And let's be honest, the LA market, television-wise, isn't the Pittsburgh market. You've got two teams in Pittsburgh. You've got the Steelers and the Penguins. I should say there are three teams. There are also the Pittsburgh Pirates of Major League Baseball, but they're a distant third to the Steelers, and the Penguins are the solid number 2 team in that market. They're very popular. They draw very well on television. And the LA Kings in this market, they have to contend with the Dodgers and the Lakers and a lot of other things like USC football going on right now. So the competition in the LA market TV wise. You also have 2 NBA teams here where Pittsburgh has no NBA team. So it is a little bit of a different situation. The Pittsburgh Sports Network that's going to be on, they're going to get good numbers. They're going to get a good, strong audience. And maybe if they add the Pittsburgh Pirates, who I think are going to be looking for a TV home after this year, then maybe that's also something. But I would be surprised if that turns out to be the case with the LA Kings. Now, we mentioned this on an earlier episode. You may have heard me talk about this before, but the Vegas Golden Knights, the defending Stanley Cup champs, they're going through this process as well. They did not buy their own sports network. They're going to have all their games on over-the-air TV in Las Vegas. So for all free TV, you're not going to have to pay anything extra. Like if you're a cable subscriber in Pittsburgh, you're obviously going to have to pay for a sports package that carries Sportsnet Pittsburgh so you can watch the Penguins game. So that's not the case for Vegas. They're over-the-air TV. You buy your basic cable package and you'll get to see all the games. So I kind of think that's the direction the LA Kings are going in. Obviously, we're not going to have answers until we have answers, but something like if you are in the Los Angeles area, something like KCOP, Channel 13, I could see as a place where the Kings could be. There could be some sort of a combination of a certain number of games there and a certain number of games on some kind of pay-per-view package. But unlike the Penguins, who are, going to be fronting all the costs for this network and also collecting all the revenue, the Kings would be sharing the costs of putting on and producing these games and then sharing the revenue with whoever their partner would be if it's a local TV station like KCOP or somebody along those lines. So still very interesting as far as what's going on, not just in the NHL, but all around sports regarding these regional sports networks that are going out of business. We've seen a lot of different teams handle this in different ways, like Vegas, like Pittsburgh. Where the Kings go, it remains to be seen. And this is affecting, Major League Baseball and the NBA as well. The Ducks, Clippers, and Angels are all going to have to go through this as well in the near future. And they're all watching the Kings to see how they handle it and to learn from what they do right or what they do wrong going forward. And maybe it's good the Kings are the first team to have to get out there and explore this and kind of get their foothold before these other sports teams locally are going to have to find where they're going to be on TV as well. So it is an evolving situation. It is very interesting. Again, until we know for sure what's going on with the Kings on TV, it's all speculation for now, but it is interesting how this thing is developing, and hopefully we'll get an answer sooner rather than later. Because as I've said before, we're all trying to figure out how we're going to spend our money. Am I going to have to make a change to, a TV package that I have now to upgrade it? If I've got DirecTV, do I need to buy some other sports package, or how that's going to work? So anyway, hopefully it gets figured out in the near future. And when it does, we'll be able to debate and decide what we think about what the Kings are doing as far as their local TV broadcasts. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch every day, we're going to have a special guest on tomorrow's show. I'm looking forward to this. Ross Levitan is going to join us. He is one of the hosts of Locked On Senators, and we're going to get a different look at the 2020 draft and the Quentin Byfield, Tim Stützle situation. We're also going to talk about a former Ottawa Senator goaltender last year, Cam Talbot, now with the LA Kings. What went wrong, what went right with him last year in Ottawa? And a guy that we talked a lot about on this show, Jacob Chychrun, is now with the Ottawa Senators. We'll ask what he's been doing and how he ended up in Ottawa as well. Also coming up on Wednesday, another special guest. We're going to have a rival report. Jess Belmosto, the host of Locked On Flames, is going to join us to talk about Calgary, and we'll get her thoughts on our LA Kings as well. Coming up on Thursday, we'll be 1 week away from LA Kings rookie camp opening up. So we're going to do a focus and a deep dive on the Kings rookies and prospects for this coming season. And then, of course, on Friday, it's our weekly LA Kings fan feedback show. If you want to send an email about anything we've talked about, you can always send an email. I know we already have some emails in the old email inbox I checked out. LockedOnEddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave your comments down below in the comment section as well. We appreciate that. We'd love you to stay connected with the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings go.